For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy.
Enormous blocks of stone, gigantic, weighing hundreds of tons. Massive, completely anonymous monuments about which we know nothing.
They are not fallen angels. They are critters.
We are sharing the planet with a species that's possibly as far in advance of us as we are from chimpanzees.
Guerrillas by night instead of armies by day.
In Utero, Ending the Cranial Deformation Myth. This is an Occult History Channel lecture. The paradigm that the so-called elongated skulls, which have been found all around the world since the early 19th century, are the results of cranial deformation, especially head binding, has always been and is, of course, hard to believe for any intelligent person. While there is no question that there are countless findings of human skulls with cranial deformation, likely belonging to cargo cults all over the world, there is also a significant number of hominid skulls that obviously can't be the product of head binding or other forms of cranial deformation in childhood. Various factors, from the volume to the bone morphology of the skulls, make it highly unlikely that these skulls once belonged to ordinary humans. Today, we are going to look at a certain group of findings that should definitely end the myth of cranial deformation. In southwestern Russia, especially in the Crimea region and of course in Peru and Bolivia, dozens of fetus skulls have been excavated, which show all the typical features of elongated skulls even pre-birth. These findings date from the 1830s to the 2020s. In the 1851 book Peruvian Antiquities, the Spanish explorer Mariano Rivero argues that the proponents of the artificial cranial deformation hypothesis are mistaken since they had only considered the skulls of adults, and their hypothesis fails to take into account the skulls of infants and, most importantly, fetuses which had similar elongated skull shapes. The book reads as follows. We ourselves have observed the same fact of the absence of signs of artificial pressure in many mummies of children of tender age, who, although they had cloths about them, were yet without any vestige or appearance of pressure of the cranium. More still, the same formation of the head presents itself in children yet unborn, and of this truth, we have had convincing proof in the sight of a fetus, enclosed in the womb of a mummy of a pregnant woman, which we found in a cave of Huichet, 2 leagues from Tarma, and which is, at this moment, in our collection. Professor Dutrepont has assured us that the fetus is one of 7 months' age. We present the reader with a drawing of this conclusive and interesting proof in opposition to the advocates of mechanical action as the sole and exclusive cause of the phrenological form of the Peruvian race. The same proof is to be found in another mummy, which exists in the Museum of Lima. Even earlier, in 1842, the British doctor P.F. Bellamy provided a detailed description of 2 infant skulls stored in the Museum of the College of Surgeons in London that showed substantial structural differences from those of normal infant skulls and the absence of the signs of artificial pressure, as well as their similarity to other skulls from the region around Lake Titicaca, which were stored in the museum. He suggested that the skulls belonged to infants a few months old. Through the decades, many more mummies of infants or fetuses with elongated skulls have been discovered in the highlands of Peru and Bolivia, with the most prominent findings made by Julio Tello in the 1920s, by Robert Connolly in the early 1990s, and by Brian Forster in recent years. Most of the specimens were found in the area of Lake Titicaca and in the former territory of the Parcas culture in Peru. Some of the most impressive findings were made in the Colca Valley and in Silistani, both in the southern part of Peru. However, mummies of infants or fetuses with elongated skulls have also been found in other parts of the globe, for example, on the Crimean Peninsula in Russia. Additionally, many depictions of children with elongated skulls are known from ancient Egypt, dating most likely to the time shortly before the so-called Exodus. While it should be obvious that many of the elongated skulls are not the result of cranial deformation, as characteristics like the volume of the skull or bone morphology cannot be changed by cranial deformation, the findings of mummified fetuses with elongated skulls finally put the cranial deformation theory to rest. There is no known way to change the skull structure or morphology of an unborn fetus, so genetics, that differ significantly from the genetic code of Homo sapiens, are the only logical explanation. The implications are, of course, massive, as it at least means that another group of hominids inhabited various parts of the globe only a few hundred years ago. Some elongated skulls in Peru and Bolivia have been dated as late as the 12th century AD. Additionally, if we consider that a larger skull volume might correspond to a bigger brain, it is likely that these hominids might have had a higher intellect than Homo sapiens, and with that, highly developed methods of stealth, making the hypothesis of their extinction at least questionable. It is also noteworthy that large parts of academic science are not interested in serious research of the elongated skull phenomena and insist on the cranial deformation theory, even if it is clearly untenable. Another highly interesting side note is the fact that John D. Rockefeller, after his Rockefeller Foundation founded the Museum of Archaeology in Jerusalem in 1927, put large efforts into shutting down the Peruvian museum and covering up any knowledge of the discovery of elongated skulls in the 1920s and 30s. John D. Rockefeller was, of course, a high-ranking Freemason, Zionist, and closely related to the Rothschild family and other Jewish banksters. So, the research of the elongated skull phenomena remains a highly interesting and multi-layered topic, and we will continue to deeply look into it in the coming months here at the Occult History channel. Hit the like button if you have enjoyed this video, and subscribe to the Occult History channel on YouTube for more videos on this and similar topics. Thank you for watching.